here I'm showing you a G-Force G101, which is a performance aftermarket gearbox, straight cut gears. So this is what people call a dog box, and a dog part means that it does not have a normal synchro mesh, but it has dogs that engage, so you can shift this really fast. You could actually use your foot and punch it and it will still engage. You cannot shift it fast enough. It's the same shifting speed as a sequential gearbox. It's just that it's operated manually. These gearboxes are extremely good value for money, and the reason for that is that they are produced in very big numbers, because this is a standard size for American gearboxes. As you can see over here, the 4 bolts, that's a size that's been used quite a lot in American gearboxes for years, like for decades. So this is a gearbox that's been an evolution of a performance gearbox that's been around for ages. And I'll show you some stuff inside this gearbox, which is really beefy. We've never had a failure on any of these gearboxes. We put as much as 1500 Newton meters through it with some of our clients, and it's a joy to shift. It's actually very fast. I'll show you some stuff when it's in the car as well. This is the shifter over here. So the shifting lever goes on this part, bolted very securely. It's very easy to make your own shifter if you want to make something very special, like a billet or Kevlar or something in a strange angle. It's super easy to bolt this on. It's extremely sturdy. There's no play. Like, it's as direct as it gets. Of course, it has uniballs to use the levers. Over here, this is the lever for the first and second gear. This is third and fourth gear. And over here is the reverse engagement, which goes over there. And these pieces slide in and out of the shifter assembly. We sell this gearbox with different shifter setbacks. So you could get the shifter closer to here or further back. And obviously you can also accommodate that with the angle of the shift lever, and we can get this in any gear ratio. The fourth gear is always going to be 1:1. So like on most gearboxes, the fifth gear is 1:1. On this gearbox, the fourth gear is 1:1. So there's a few questions that keep coming back with this gearbox. One of them is the side shift. People say, hey, what about the center shift? What does that cost? Well, that's considerably more expensive, and that's mainly due to the fact that the shifter of the center shift is quite expensive. It's a way less produced gearbox. This gearbox is basically the ultimate evolution of a standard American Muncie 4-speed, which is a performance gearbox that was in Camaros and Corvettes and those kinds of cars already in the 60s. And that had a similar layout like this. I can show you one of those in a bit, because I also have one of those. And this has basically been perfected by the Americans for decades. This is an extremely strong gearbox. Like, we know people that put over 1500 horsepower through it without any problems. And that's on a drag strip with drag radials and huge supercharged engines. So that's an extremely strong gearbox. And the second question that we get a lot is about the gearing. So people say like, hey, it's a 4-speed gearbox. I'd like to have a 5-speed because I'm doing this and that speed on that and that track, and I really need 5 gears. Well, that's great, because this gearbox, the 4th gear on this, is actually a 1:1, and on almost all other gearboxes the 5th gear is 1:1. So it's not like you're losing a 5th gear, you're basically losing a 1st gear. And that's not a really bad thing, because on road cars the 1st gear is extremely short, because that's made for the car to park and to pull a trailer up a hill and all those kinds of things. And in a race car you don't really need that. So what happens if you run a road car type of gearbox is that you are spending very little time in the 1st gear. So you drive away from the starting line and you immediately have to shift already. With this gear you're actually staying in the 1st much longer, which means that you're actually doing some labor in the 1st gear, which actually gives you an advantage rather than a disadvantage. Because, as I said, the 1st gear is so extremely short for a race car that it's not really needed, especially if you have a powerful engine. What I also love about this gearbox is the way the shaft attaches to it. So it has a slip yoke, which is a very American thing. A lot of American cars and gearboxes have this, and it just slides in, which is very convenient for fitting the gearbox shaft or the drive shaft, but it's also a very good way to transfer the power, because the splines in here have a lot of contact with the yoke, so you're not losing much power, and it's extremely strong and extremely durable. Your car can do like with a standard set of gears, you'll be able to do 230-240 kilometers an hour, but you'll have a very good price for this gearbox, and the reason for that is that they are produced in very high numbers, which obviously brings the price down. It's very nice that it's a cast unit, so it's actually very light, so these are around 50 kilos. I can show you that on the scales a little bit later if you want. So this is the way the shifter sits in my car. As you can see, it's about let's say 5 centimeters, so 1.5 inches more to the left compared to the original position. I'm 6'5" and I have my seat relatively close to the steering wheel, and I always set it up so that my legs have a 90-degree angle, so my seat is tilted a little bit backwards, so when you're braking that you still have some support from the seat and you're not just being pushed in the belt. So this is like my normal standard sitting position, and if I would put the car in first gear or second gear, it would be better. You could I still have like almost a fist between it and that second gear, which is the most left point for forward gears, and the rear is over there. What I really like about this gearbox, what a lot of people don't realize, that if you have a 4-speed H pattern, it's very easy to shift. Like, it's a very low chance of misshifting, because it's either to the left forward and backwards, or to the right forward and backwards, and the right position is actually the standard centering. So let's say that you're in first gear when you're leaving the line. Obviously now it doesn't engage because of the dog. Obviously you have all the time in the world, and it's no stress or nothing. Put it in first. Then second, you're usually also not drifting. It's just low speed before you're engaging the drift. And then third, which is usually on some tracks already a shift that's happening during drifting, you just push it forward. You don't have to push it to the right side, because it goes to the right side by itself. It just slots into third if you push it forward. All you have to do is push forward. Fourth is obviously the same, so it centers between fourth and third in the standard position. You don't have to do anything for that. And the great thing about that, of course, is that you usually enter a track in fourth and you just shift back once to third. You can do that extremely fast, like the gearbox. It doesn't matter how fast you do it. Like I said before, if somebody would use their foot from sitting on the back seat, the gearbox would totally handle that, which you can forget with the road car gearbox, which is synchronized, so you would simply break the synchros. So I really like that. So first, second and third is just that. Fourth, and that's where all the magic happens in third and fourth, obviously, which is basically the same motion as in sequential gearbox. You're just moving forward or you're moving backwards. You don't have to make any side-to-side adjustment with your hand. And that's how it sits in the car. And as you can see over here, that's the Sfi Shifter Booth, which is a standard item that you can order everywhere that we use for this. And that's a side plate that we made on the E46. It's not very difficult to fit these. You just need to do some custom work, obviously. If we remove these panels, which have riv nuts behind it, we could even inspect the gearbox and check out the dogs or whatever, if you wanted to check that out. And here you can see that it centers, and we could like move this handbrake, could even move to this position if we wanted to. So if you would make an offset shifter, if you would really say like, yo, I really need to have that shifter exactly in the original location, you could make an offset shifter and put it in the exact location as standard.